بقصص الأنبياء والمرسلين وأكمل إيمان المسلمين والمؤمنين بولاية علي أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام. والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أفضل الموجودات العبد المؤيد والرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد، أعني أبا القاسم محمد محمد وعلى روحه ونفسه وسهره ووسيه سيد الأتقياء والأسفياء مولى الموالي إمام المتقين علي بن أبي طالب وعلى أوصيائه لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفدا واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله الحكيم في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد. In the month of Shawwal, there are two important dates. The date for the Battle of Uhud, which is the Shahadat of Hazrat Hamza, and the Shuhada of Uhud. And then there is the Shahadat and martyrdom of Imam Jaffar Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. Allahumma salli. Imam, we are associated with the sixth Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, and people call us Ja'fari, and that we are the followers of the sixth Imam alayhi salam. It is not like being Hanafi or Maliki or Shafi'i or Hanbali. Being Ja'fari means that you are Muhammadi. Being Ja'fari means you are Alawi, Fatimi, Hassani and Husseini. It is not a school of thought which instigates another methodology of beliefs and practices. It is in fact the true school of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And hence we are proud to be Ja'fari, because being Ja'fari means that he was also born on the the same Wiladat of the Holy Prophet date, 17th of Rabiul Awwal. And not only that he shares the Wiladat and the birthday with the Holy Prophet, he also shares his title with the Holy Prophet. The Holy Prophet is known to be Sadiq and Amin. Amongst the prophets, the most truthful prophet is the Holy Prophet, and the Imam is Jaffar Sadiq, which is the indicator that the religion is the most true religion, and the Imam who saved it is the Imam who is the most true and upright leader. Now there is an kunniyat he shares with Imam Hussain alayhi salam, Abu Abdullah, Aba Abdullah or Abi Abdullah, depending on the Arab and the grammar. In Arabic you will have Aba Abdullah or Abu Abdullah or Abi Abdullah. Imam Hussain alayhi salam is, when you recite his ziyarat, you say, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. And in the books of ahadith, you will come across the traditions from Imam Jaffar Sadiq alayhi salam the most, and it will be an Abi Abdullah. So an Abi Abdullah, throughout all of the hadith book have traditions that have been reported from the sixth Imam alayhi salam, the highest number of traditions. And he is the founder of the university in Medina, where he founded a university and taught 4,000 students in a university. Back in the day, this was one of the biggest universities to have ever been found. Even today, you have universities that have, no more than 20,000 students. And these are big universities I'm talking about. Yes, there may be, a few that have 70, 80,000 or 100,000 students, but generally 15, 20,000 students in a university, in a big university, is a good number. Can you imagine that this country, Britain, is known for its tourism and education? Yes? The biggest industry in this country is tourism, and the second biggest industry is education. They have foreign students that pay huge amounts of money to come and study here. And any university that you go to that has even 20,000 students will have so many departments and faculties, and each faculty will have sometimes 20 professors, associate professors, lecturers teaching. For example, if you have chemistry, there'll be so many people teaching chemistry. There'll be so many people, and when you ask why so many professors for the same subject, they will tell you that the speciality of each professor is something different. Can you imagine a university that has 4,000 students, over 30 subjects being taught, and there is only one professor? And that professor is Jaffar ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. And many times you have students that have so much potential that the lecturer or the professor, when he teaches, cannot, fulfill the needs of the student. You teach and they say, no, I need more. For example, you're not teaching enough. You're not giving enough material in 2 hours or something. And sometimes you have a research degree, then, for MPhil or a PhD, you go and they cannot find you a person who can supervise, a professor that can supervise that degree. I've applied to so many universities for a PhD. They will say, we don't have a supervisor in the subject that you're asking. Can you imagine that there are 4,000 students in a university and all are studying under one professor? All of them lack the profession and potential to truly benefit from the knowledge of one professor. And that professor is Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. In today's university, when you graduate, you have a black gown. You've probably noticed. You've seen that they have a black cap that they would wear on the day of graduation. Or have they changed it? No, they haven't. So usually, have you ever thought, where does this black gown and the black cap comes from? It comes from the graduation of Jaffar ibn Muhammad alayhi salam. He used to give an abba to his students. And this dress that we wear, if the Imam alayhi salam had not allowed us, we were not allowed to wear it. Today, Imam alayhi salam allowed the dress of his forefathers for his students, and he said, I want the dress of the Holy Prophet to be common. And he gave all of his students the amama and abba. This is the University of Jaffar ibn Muhammad, 4,000 students. One of the students, Hazrat Zarara, he said, one day he complained to the Imam alayhi salam and he said, Mawla, I've been coming for years. Over 20 years, I have been coming with my father, and now I'm studying under you for over 20 years. And for these 20 years, you've taught me Hajj. When will this Hajj finish, Mawla? When will you start teaching me something other than Hajj? The Imam al-Islam replied, O Zurara, the Hajj that started 2,000 years before the creation of Adam alayhi salam. You want me to teach you all the history, the philosophy, and all the rituals of Hajj within 20 years? Can you imagine? There were students in different classes, and the Imam alayhi salam would prepare, teach them all the different subjects. There was a Grand Mufti or a great scholar from Damascus. He was the greatest scholar in Damascus. And he came to Medina and he said, I want to debate with Jaffar ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq alayhi salam. When he came to Medina, he spoke to the students of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and he said, I want to debate your teacher. He said, why don't you discuss with us first? Why don't you ask us questions? He said, no, I want to debate your teacher. I'm the greatest teacher in Damascus and I want to debate the greatest teacher here. The students tried to convince him that this is the Imam. He's not just a teacher, he's an Imam. He wouldn't accept. He said, I want to speak to the Imam. So the students went to the Imam and said, Mawla, there is a scholar that has come from Damascus and he wants to debate you. The Imam said, come and sit down. What's the issue? What do you want to discuss? He said, I want to debate you on the Holy Quran. The Imam said, speak to my student, Hamza at-Tayyar. He said, no, but I want to debate you. He said, no, speak to my student first. Discuss with him and then come. He said, no, but I want to debate you. He said, if you defeat my students, it is equal to defeating me. Because he was so sure about his training that any of his students are so strong, they can debate anyone. So the man, the scholar sat down in a corner in Masjid al-Nabawi, debating Hamza at-Tayyar. Came back to the Imam and said, no, but I want to debate you. He said, have you defeated my student? He said, no, he is too strong for me. So he said, then why do you want to debate me? He said, but I want to change the subject. I don't want to debate the Holy Quran. I want to debate on Hadith now. The Imam said, call Muhammad ibn Muslim, my other student. He said, sit down with him. He came back and he said, no, but I want to now discuss and debate you on jurisprudence, on fiqh. He said, call Zurara. He said, now I want to debate you on theology. He said, call Hisham ibn Salim. He said, I want to debate you on imamat. I'm obviously shortening it because of the time. Each time he would finish a debate, he would come back to the Imam and said, I want to debate you. The Imam said, talk to Hisham ibn Hakam. After one subject, he would go on to another, on literature, on poetry, on everything he would discuss. The Imam would send a student. Then he would ask, he said, what have you fed your students? He said, my pure knowledge. Can you imagine the Imam who had trained 4,000 students, and he would not even object to any student coming from different faith? You know, people who were not Shia, people who were not even Muslims would come and study under the Imam alayhi salam. And he would never say, why are you here to study under me? He would allow them to sit down in his lectures. Once a Greek physician came to the Imam alayhi salam. And in Tawheed Mufaddal, you will read in more detail the Book of Unity by Mufaddal ibn Umar. You know, 3 volumes, small 3 volumes. It talks about some of those things from the 6th Imam alayhi salam. So he was a zoologist, or whatever you want to call him. He was an expert in different sciences, but he was an expert on medicine. Especially, he had a lot of research on animals, on birds. He sat down and he came and discussed with the Imam alayhi salam. He said, what is the core, what is the main reason for the different illnesses? The Imam alayhi salam said, it is your stomach, you know, the intake. And today we have seen, there are many doctors here, that they say you are what you eat. Yes? All the intake of the food, he said, al-ma'datu ummudda, your stomach is the mother of all illnesses. The Imam Islam, he said in one sentence, your religion has summarized the entire medicine. He sat down and started discussing with the Imam Islam. He said, give me a proof on the existence of God. So the Imam looked at his profession. You see, each person he discusses based on his profession. So he said, what do you do? So he said, I'm an expert on birds and animals. He said, have you seen that no matter which egg you crack, there is, you know, the yolk and the, you know, this, the white and the yellow substances. It's very similar color. He said, yes. He said, from the peacock, from the hens, from pigeons, from all the different species of the birds, you will find the same material or the same combination in the same egg, in every egg. He said, yes. He said, but even if a bird cracks the eggs of the other bird and leaves their own eggs, and when the other bird comes back and thinks that these are my eggs from another bird, you know, another species of birds. Many birds do that. It does not say that because these eggs are not mine, they will not nurture the chick. And when the chick grows up, it still is the baby or the chick of the first, you know, the bird that laid the eggs. Have you seen that each and every bird has different feathers, different languages? You know, when they make the sounds, when one bird whistles, the other one, you know, all of these colors in the peacocks and all of the different birds. Have you ever noticed? He said, yes. He said, can you imagine that the egg may be different sizes and different shapes, but when you open it, they all have similar material. But the Creator is so alimu khabir, is so omniscient and omnipotent, that He has created so many birds with so many different dialects, you know, like they all make different sounds and they communicate with each other. It is not that there is no communication. There is communication between them. And no bird ever confuses the other. You know, the eggs are different. When the Imam went into the details, he said, have you done research on eggs? The Imam al-Islam said, no. He said, then how come you know so much in detail about all of the different eggs? I'm not going into more details. He said, because the Creator who created all of those different species of birds and eggs has made me his hujjah. And the hujjah understands all the different species because he is the hujjah on every creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Can you imagine? This is the Imam. This is an Imam. There are many different students who came from different countries, different cities, and they spoke in their own languages with the Imam. And a man asked the Imam alayhi salam once, he said, have you been to their country? Or have you been to their area? He said, no. He said, then how do you know their language? He said, I don't need to go to that place to learn their language. Many times, people are amazed at how the Imam or the A'imma alayhi salam would know so many different languages. I want to very quickly go into some of the hadiths and contributions of the Imam alayhi salam, Imam Jaffar Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. Muhammad wa'ajjil farja. But before I mention some of the hadiths of the Imam Islam, there is a person who rows a boat, and he comes to the Imam al-Islam and says that, prove me the existence of God. And the Imam says, what do you do? He said, I row a boat. I take people from one end of the river to the other. He said, have you ever noticed that a boat breaks have you ever witnessed that your boat has broken? He said, yes, it happens all the time because this is my profession. He said, have you ever seen floods in the river? He said, yes, it happens once or twice a year. I always witness floods. He said, have you ever seen that there is, like the rivers usually sometimes when they are overflooded, the water itself, just like wind, they have swirls inside the river. He said, yes, I've witnessed it. I've witnessed it every year. It happens every now and then. He said, have you ever, when the boat is broken, felt that you are drowning? He said, all the time. Because the flow of the water is so, the current in the water is so strong. He said, have you ever felt that when you're drowning, someone can save you? He said, all the time. He said, when you feel that someone can save you, that is God. Deep inside everyone's heart, there is God. So sometimes, when different people came to the Imam al-Islam, he gave them, based on their own intellect, he gave them proofs. The two big Imams of our Sunni brothers, Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik, both studied under the sixth Imam al-Islam. Imam Abu Hanifa studied 2 years. And Imam Abu Hanifa's name was Nu'man ibn Thabit. And he says, Lawla sanatan lahalaka Nu'man. Had it not been for the 2 years that I studied under Imam Jaffar Sadiq alayhi salam, I would have perished. Meaning, everything I have is from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Imam Malik says that 7 years that I studied under Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, never did I see him other than these 3 states. Either he was praying, or he was fasting, or he was doing dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning he was in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Never did I see him in a 4th state. He was always either praying, fasting, or in a state of dhikr. When people ask, how did the Imam recite the Quran? His students describe as if the Quran had only come for him. How was the prayer of the Imam, his namaz? They said as if the prayer was only made for him. Imam Malik ibn Anas, of our Sunni brothers, he says that on Hajj, when the Imam left Medina to go to Mecca, he stopped for ihram in Masjid al-Shajara, which is the miqat of the people of Medina. He said when the Imam stopped, all of the people in that group, they left for Mecca. And the Imam was still waiting, he was still wearing his ihram and crying. Imam Malik says that I asked, "O my master, Sayyidi, O my Lord, what's wrong? Why aren't you coming?" He said, only I have said labbaik, Allahumma labbaik to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I have not heard labbaik from him. Until he says labbaik, I will not leave. Can you imagine? He's teaching the people that you just utter the words and you leave. There is a connection between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is a connection between the hujjah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he was indicating to Imam Malik, obviously Imam Malik and Imam Abu Hanifa, or I'm not sure about Imam Abu Hanifa, but Imam Malik surely was not anti-Imam or against the Imam in the beginning. He had studied, and then later on he started his own school and his own path. Originally he was a student, he was a dedicated student. And in his words, he says, I have not seen or heard or read about a scholar who is as learned as Jaffar Sadiq alayhi salam, and who is as pious as Jaffar Sadiq. and who has so much ibadat as Jaffar as-Sadiq alayhi salam. Can you imagine? That Imam Malik says, I've not seen or heard. Obviously, this is in comparison to all of the worldly scholars. Every student of the Imam would bear witness that the Imam alayhi salam had taken advantage. And you all know that the advantage was because of the dispute between Bani Abbas and Banu Umayyah. I only have about another 10-15 minutes before I come to Masa'ib. Only one Imam ever had freedom when two big families were fighting each other for power, for government. And the Imam alayhi salam took the best advantage. He said, let them fight. And during those 20 years, he founded the greatest of the universities, and he legislated so many rules, and he gave the true understanding of Islam of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. I, over 20 years ago, witnessed the madrasa and the building of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam's university in Medina. But then in following years, I saw that it had been destroyed by Ali Saud. So the building was in Medina, and it was destroyed by Ali Saud. You can imagine the Imam alayhi salam at the time taught. In his time, there was a ruler called Mansur Dawaniqi, who basically saw and heard that the Imam alayhi salam has so many students, and he teaches in Masjid al-Nabawi and he teaches in his institution. And one day he turned up in Masjid al-Nabawi in the presence of the Imam alayhi salam, to see what the Imam teaches. And the Imam, as soon as he saw Mansur al-Dawaniqis come in, he turned the other way while teaching. He wouldn't look at Mansur al-Dawaniqi. Obviously, Mansur did not come alone. He had come with his soldiers and his guards. And he got up and came and sat down in front of the Imam on the other side. And the Imam Islam, as soon as he saw him sitting on the other side, he turned the other way. And then he realized that the Imam is avoiding me. So he got up and he said, Ya Jaffar ibn Muhammad, I'm your Hakim, I'm your ruler, I'm your king, I'm your Khalifa, I'm your ruler. You should show respect to me. The Imam al-Islam said, I'm teaching. What he wanted to do is get the Imam to say that he is my Khalifa, he's my ruler. Why did all of these Khulafa emphasize on getting allegiance from the A'imma alayhimus salam when they had all of the people pay allegiance? Because they knew that if the whole world pays allegiance to them, but the Imams do not, the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam do not, they have no legitimacy. So they intentionally emphasized that the Imams pay allegiance to them. And every Imam was under the pressure of paying allegiance. And that's why they would kill them. So Mansur al-Dawaniqi said, I am your Khalifa. He said, I've got nothing to do with the rulers, I'm teaching. I'm not interfering. And from there, Mansur al-Dawaniqi saw that the Imam alayhi salam, when he's teaching, that he has no respect for the Banu Umayyah and Banu Abbas. This is the Imam alayhi salam who was academic, in the sense that he had a chance to produce academic work. Otherwise, all of our Imams are the same. They're all academics. Imam Amirul Mu'minin says that, Lo ju'ilat liyal wisada, if I was given a cushion to sit down and teach. Cushion is meaning I wasn't dragged into battles. When you rest and you're at ease. He says, if I was given a cushion and I was at ease, I would answer all the questions of the people who believe in the Torah, from the Torah. The people who believe in Psalms of David, from the Psalms of David. The people who believe in the New Testament, I would answer them from there. And the people who believe in the Holy Quran, I would answer them from the Holy Quran. And the people who don't believe in any book, then I would answer them from logic that they would admit that the best answer is by Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. But did that happen? No, the people dragged each one of the Imams into the battles. And they emphasize that even if you are not into the, coming to the battle, then you cannot teach. From the 4th Imam onwards, even Imam Hussain alayhi salam. We only look at Karbala, but if you look at the life of Imam Hussain alayhi salam before Karbala, he had no role. Banu Umayyah had made sure that people do not even ask questions from Imam Hussain alayhi salam. They had made sure that he is cornered. He has no role in the society. If he appeared, then they would say, no, you cannot come into the masjid, or you cannot speak here. He was not allowed to speak. They had tortured him so much, so mental torture, that Muawiyah had made sure that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam cannot invite the people towards the truth. And the 6th Imam al-Islam, when sometimes we say that, why did the Aimma alayhim salam not rise against the tyrants or not fight them? You see, even Imam Hussain alayhi salam, had it not been Yazid who had forced the Imam alayhi salam to come and either pay allegiance or die. He said, well, you have lost, and he says himself, Ad-da'i ibn ad-da'i yarkazanu bayna isnatayn, bayna sillati wa dhillah. He mentions his name and his father, meaning he says that, this person who is, with the children, he is illegitimate of birth and his father was similar, has not left me a choice but to either fight baina sillati wa dhillah, or I am disgraced. Hai haat min nadillah. Disgrace is far from Ahlul Bayt. Therefore, I will have to fight. He has not left me a choice but to fight. So if the Imam alayhi salam was not forced to fight, Sayyid Shahadat alayhi salam, all of the Imam had the same policy. We do not begin the battle. The Holy Prophet did not. 27 battles he fought. All were defensive. He was under attack. Many people argue that no, Khaybar, the battle of Khaybar was not defensive, it was offensive. Even Khaybar, the battle of Khaybar was defensive, because the people of Khaybar were attacking the Muslims and the Holy Prophet wrote a letter to them, not once but 3 times, to make them stop. And when they did not stop, that's when he attacked them. So the Aimma alayhim salam's policy is not the offense. Their policy was to teach and to deliver. Like was the 6th Imam alayhi salam. And whenever they wanted to fight, whenever they wanted to go to a battle, they would not go to a battle in a holy place. When the Holy Prophet knew that now there will be battles, he migrated from Mecca to Medina, because he was going to battle. Yes, he was going to fight. Mecca was a holy place. It was Kaaba, Qibla there. So he migrated from Kaaba, from Mecca to Medina. When Amirul Mu'mineen, when he took off his government, he took the power, he knew that there will be battles. He quickly migrated from Medina to Kufa. Imam Hussain alayhi salam did not fight Yazid in Medina or Mecca. He left for Karbala. So in holy places, it is, many times, many of the people are visiting ziyarat. It is something to remember. Do not fight in holy places. The sin is sometimes 70 times more or 70,000 times more. I hope people understand that. Doing ghibat, they say that's why Imam Hussain says, my guest is only for 3 days, so that you don't sin here. Leave after 3 days. Don't sin in holy places, because the sin, just like the ibadat is multiplied, the sin is also multiplied. So the Imam alayhi salam said, look, in holy places, when you come with the respect, come with dignity. When coming, for example, to the masjid even here, there are hadiths that say from Imam Jaffar Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, that when you talk about worldly affairs, meaning dunya, when you are completely indulged into dunya, in 5 places, then your a'mal, your deeds of 70 years have gone to waste. And one of them is masjid, or cemetery, for example, the second. So when in good places, or places that should remind you of God and not dunya. There is a hadith that says, my time is finished, but before I come to Masahib, there is a hadith by Amir al-Mu'mineen that says that he was in a funeral. I think it is in Kufa. He was in a funeral in Kufa, and there was a man who was laughing in the funeral. The Imam said, stop the funeral. Stop right here. He said, placed the funeral on the ground and he gave a sermon. He said, are you not going to die? Is death only for other people? Why are you disrespecting this person who has died? Why are you laughing in his funeral? Do you not think that you will die one day? Show respect to this man who has left this world. So in a funeral, in a cemetery, in masjid, in adhan, and in the recitation of the Holy Quran, in these 5 times, do not talk about worldly things, the 6th Imam al-Islam says. So in holy places, the Imam al-Islam have emphasized 6th Imam al-Islam. So I cannot go into more details. But the 6th Imam al-Islam, his policy was same as the Holy Prophet and Amir al-Mu'mineen and Imam Hassan and Imam Hussain alayhi salam. He did not wish to go too offensive. Many of his students came and complained to him. Imam Hussain, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, Imam Hussain alayhi salam, he went to Karbala with only 72 people. You have 4,000 students. Why don't you rise against Banu Umayyah and Banu Abbas? He said, but I don't have 20 like the Shahadat of Karbala. My grandfather, my great-grandfather had 72. Even if I had 20 like Habib ibn Mudahir, like Abbas ibn Ali, only 20, I would rise. So the man said, no, but you have more than 20, Mawla. He said, for example, tell me. He said, for example, myself. I'm amongst those, I'm like the Shahadat of Karbala. He said, are you? He said, yes. He said, you see that fire on the ground? You know, in olden days they would have fire in the ground for bread. Even these days, you know, you have the stoves. He said, yes, I'm one of those. He said, open the lid and jump in the fire. He said, but Mawla, I have little children. The Imam said, well, I told you, those 72 were like that. They would give their lives for Imam Hussain. If the Imam had said, cut your own necks with your own swords, they would do it. He went quiet. And suddenly Hazrat Harun Makki walked in, radiyallahu anhu, one of the students of the Imam. Imam did not say anything to Hazrat Harun. He said, Harun, jump in the fire. He picked up the lid, jumped in and closed the lid. He said, I could promise you he was amongst those 20. You know, you are saying that if you had 20, he was like that. The Imam started asking questions about some of the other students. He said, how is my student so and so? So the man was baffled and he couldn't think straight. He said, yeah, he's fine. He said, what about the other student? He said, Mawla, I'm really surprised at you. You just killed a man and you are talking about other students? I can't even think straight. I can't even think of anything. The Imam said, come with me. He picked up the lid and the fire had turned into flowers. He said, tell me how many like him, Harun Makki, do I have in Medina? He said, not even 20. You see, the 12th Imam needs 313, not millions. So there are millions and millions of Shias, and when the Imam comes, there will be hundreds of millions of Shias, inshallah. Yes? But not like me. He needs 313 like Habib ibn Mudahir. 313 like Hazrat Qasim ibn Hassan. You know, the level is very high, that the expectations of the Imam are very high. My time is finished, but even in Medina, you know, even in Medina, the Imam had tough time. And many a times, you know, the Imams in Medina were poisoned, not just once or twice. Many a times they were poisoned. The 6th Imam alayhi salam's house was burned down by Mansur al-Dawanaqi. He put fire on the house of the Imam. When he put the fire on the house, he told his people to burn the house of the Imam. It was night time. It was probably around midnight. As soon as there was fire in the house of the Imam came out of his house into the courtyard. And the servants in his house started putting water on the house to put out the fire. Meanwhile, his daughters came out. And when his daughters came out, they started running from east to west in the courtyard. Fire, fire, they were crying. And the Imam alayhi salam sat next to the wall crying. One of his servants asked him, Mawla, what's wrong? Why are you crying so much? You're not helping us put out the fire. You're not leaving the house. You're sitting down in the courtyard and crying. Mawla, why? He said, because I remembered Sham-e Ghariba. My grandfather Hussein had been killed. My uncle Abbas had been killed. And my grandfather Sajjad was in a tent who was unwell. And can you imagine all of my aunts running from one tent to the other? He said, when I remember Sham-e Ghariba, it makes me cry that all of those ladies were surrounded by the soldiers of Yazid who were putting fire, and with the javelins they were taking away the chadars of the bibis. And they were hitting them and saying, call your Abbas, call your brother Hussein. And he said they were likes of Sakina bintul Hussein and the little girls who were crying and saying, Abbas, oh my uncle Abbas, come. This is the house of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam being burned down. The riwayat from the 5th Imam and 6th Imam and 12th Imam alayhi salam. I want to very quickly mention about Karbala and Sham-e Ghariba before I recite the full Shahadat of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Please come with me to Karbala and then we'll go to Medina together. In the plains of Karbala there is fire and it is Sham-e Ghariba and the ladies are coming out of the tents. But before that, there is a riwayat that says that Imam Hussein alayhi salam, when he dropped from the back of his Zuljana, his horse, Imam Baqir was asked, Mawla, the horse started encompassing Imam Hussein alayhi salam, running around Imam Hussein and making noises. The Imam said, yes. He said, Mawla, was he saying something? The 5th Imam said, yes. He was saying to Imam Hussein, oh my master, once come back on my back and I will take you so far that not a single arrow will hit you. Mawla Hussein, please come on my back again and I will take you very far. The Imam looked up and said to his horse and said, oh my Zuljana, oh Al-Maymun. He called him by his name. He said, go back to the tents and tell my sisters and my daughters that I have dropped from your back. The horse came back to the tents of Hazrat Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Imam Zamana in his ziyarat says that the ladies would find out that Imam Hussein has come because of the noise that his horse would make. As soon as the horse came and started making the noises, all the ladies came out of the tent. 12th Imam says, Latimatil Khudud. All of my aunts were hitting their chests and their cheeks. They were beating their cheeks and crying, Ya Hussein, Wa Husaina. And the daughter of Imam Hussein, Sakina bintul Hussein, raised her hand and held the reins of the horse and brought it to her and said, O horse of my father, Ya Jawad, hal suqiya abi am qutila atshana. O horse of my father, please tell me, when my father left the tents, he was thirsty. Did you give him any water or did he die thirsty? Was he killed when he was thirsty? Zuljana had tears in the eyes. Janabi Sakina answered, I know you cannot speak. O horse, I know that your saddle, the saddle on your back is hanging. It is an indicator my father did not come off your back. My father dropped from your back. She started crying. This is Imam Baqir and Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Just the last few words, few minutes only. Let's go to Medina. The Imam, when he would listen to Majlis, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, there is a riwayat that says that he would hold Majlis in his house. A man came to 6th Imam. He said, Mawla, why do you have so many tears in your eyes? Mawla, why are you crying so much? The Imam said, do you not know today is Ashura? The man said, Mawla, I had forgotten and the government does not announce. He said, today is the day of martyrdom of my grandfather Hussein. The man was far distant relative of Imam alayhi salam. He was from the family of his mother, Hazrat Farwa. The Imam asked him, have you said any poetry for my grandfather? He said, yes, Mawla, I have said some poetry. He said, please read the poetry, like we read Marsiya. He said, Mawla, shall I read the Marsiya? Shall I read the poetry for your grandfather? He said, please read it. When the man started reading, he said, Mawla said, stop. Before you continue, let my mother, my sisters, my wife and my daughters come. He told a lady in the house, please place a curtain here. This was the courtyard of the house of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam in Medina. The lady placed a curtain. The Imam said, please call my mother. Hazrat Farwa came and sat down. The sisters and the daughters of the Imam alayhi salam came and sat down. Imam said now to the man, please continue reciting the Masaib. The man started reciting. And while he was reciting the Masaib of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, he said, he heard the mother of Imam alayhi salam started crying loudly. She was an elderly woman. The man said, "O Farwa, if you cry too much, then your son Jaffar Sadiq will come and remove all of your tears. He will give you water. He will embrace you. But Farwa, when your aunts Zainab and Kulsum cried in the plains of Karbala, Shimr would lash them with his lash. He would hit them with his lash and say, Oh Zainab, Kulsum, you are not allowed to cry on your brother Hussein." The Imam spoke, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam spoke loudly and he said, close the doors as all of Medina have come to our house. And everyone on the door started saying, what has happened in the house of Jaffar Sadiq? Why is everyone crying? The Imam said, close the doors, my son has fainted. My son has fainted. Can you imagine the Majlis in the house of the Imam alayhi salam who truly understood the Masaib? Let me just save 2 more minutes, last 2 minutes. The Imam alayhi salam heard that the grandsons of Imam Hassan and Mujtaba, the Sayyids from the progeny of Imam Hassan and Mujtaba, were taken as prisoners by Bani Abbas. They had captured them, tied their hands and they were dragging them. The Imam came running outside without his imama, without shoes. He came running just in his shirt, and he said, why are you taking these children of Imam Hassan alayhi salam? They have not done any wrong, please leave them. A man said, oh Jaffar ibn Muhammad, you are not supposed to speak, this is an order of the Khalifa. Another man came and he ripped the shirt of the Imam alayhi salam. Another man picked up his lash and he started beating the Imam alayhi salam with the lash. The Imam was quite elderly at the time. When the man lashed the Imam alayhi salam on his back, in that lash was poison. According to a hadith, there was poison in that lash, and when he hit him really hard with the lash, the back of the Imam was wounded and the head of the Imam was hurt, and the Imam dropped on the floor. His sons and nephews picked him up and brought him back to the house. And this was the time when the Imam's Shahadat happened with those wounds. Before I complete, you know that every Imam wanted to be buried next to the Holy Prophet, but no Imam was allowed to be buried next to the Prophet. So the sixth Imam made a will. He said, bury me next to my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, Imam Hassan, Imam Zain al-Abidin, Imam Baqir alayhi salam. Do you know what would the Imam say? They would invite all the people of Medina. They say one of the greatest funerals in the history of Islam was of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Thousands and thousands of people came to attend the funeral. Why? Because this is Jaffar Sadiq alayhi salam. Just two words I want to say. This is an Imam there are thousands of people attending the funeral of, and there was another Imam whose body was trampled by horses, whose body was laying in the plains of Karbala. He was not given any kafan. He did not have a proper funeral. On the third day, when his body was in the sunlight, came his son Imam Sajjad and said, O people, O Bani Asad, come and help me bury my father Hussein. For this is the grandson of the Holy Prophet. This is the son of Ali and Fatima, whose body lies wounded in the plains of Karbala. And he said, please bring me एक चटाई ला दो. जब एक मर्तबा चटाई लाए, कहा मौला चटाई क्यों चाहिए? कहा मेरे बाबा के लाशे पे घोड़े दौड़ाए गए थे, मैं अपने बाबा के आज़ा को जमा करूंगा. इमाम ज़ैनुल आबिदीन ने लाशा रखा, फिर आज़ाद जमा किए. बनी असद ने पूछा, कैदी क्या कर रहे हैं? कहा मैं लाशा जमा कर रहा हूं. इमाम ने किसी जगह से कोई मुख्तलिफ जगहों से आज़ा को जमा किया. कहा मौला ये क्या है? कहा मेरे बाबा के लाशे पे घोड़े दौड़ाए गए. अला लअनतुल्लाहि अलल कौमिज़ ज़ालिमीन व सयअलमुल लज़ीना ज़लमू अय्य मुनक़लिबिन यनक़लिबून. Parvardigara, O Allah, for the sake of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, hasten in the reappearance of the Prophet Imam alayhi salam. Parvardigara, for the sake of Imam Sadiq, O Allah, we want to see Jannatul Baqi rebuilt. O Allah, there are holy sites which are under attack in Iraq, in Syria, in other places. O Allah, protect all of our holy sites. O Allah, protect all the mu'mineen across the globe. O Allah, put an end to all the wars and all the pandemics that are happening in this world. O Allah, protect all the mu'mineen and give us ziyarat in our lifetime of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. O Allah, give us shafaat of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam in the hereafter. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم بحق محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. ماتم حسين يا حسين Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein,
बर्बाद हुई मैं, बर्बाद हुई मैं, आबाद हुए कर्बो बला उजरा मदीना. बर्बाद हुई मैं, आबाद हुए कर्बो बला उजरा मदीना. बर्बाद हुई मैं, आबाद ہوئی کرب و بلا برباد ہوئی میں زینب کو نہ رسا یا محرم کا مہینہ برباد ہوئی میں آباد ہوئی کرب و بلا اجرا مدینہ برباد ہوئی میں آباد ہوئی برباد ہوئی میں ایک دن تھا کہ اس شہر کی کرتی تھی میں شاہی اور آج تباہی اور آج تباہی بے غسل پڑا مہر نبوت کا نگینہ برباد ہوئی ہے آباد ہوئی کرب و بلا اجرا مدینہ برباد ہوئی میں آباد ہوئی کرب و بلا اجرا مدینہ برباد ہوئی میں کس لاش پہ رو کس چوروں میں برادر لاشیں ہیں 75 لاشیں ہیں 75 حد یہ ہے کہ رونے کی اجازت بھی ملی نہ برباد ہوئی میں ہوئی کرب و بلا اجرا مدینہ برباد ہوئی میں آباد ہوئی کرب و بلا اجرا مدینہ برباد ہوئی میں اصغر کا غلا بھائی کا سر سینہ اکبر سب کو ہر چادر سب کو ہر چادر اس دشت میں لوٹا ہے زینب کا خزینہ برباد ہوئی میں ہوئی کرب و بلا اجرا مدینہ برباد ہوئی میں آباد ہوئی کرب و بلا اجرا مدینہ برباد ہوئی میں ایک آگ ہے خیموں میں قیامت کا سما ہے غازی تو کہاں ہے غازی تو کہاں ہے دیکھو تو ردہ چھین لیا شمر کمینہ برباد ہوئی میں آباد بلا اجرا مدینہ برباد ہوئی میں آباد ہوئی کرب و بلا اجرا مدینہ برباد ہوئی میں چادر چھنی دور لے گئے اب ظلم نہ ڈھاؤ بابا سے ملاؤ بابا سے ملاؤ نیزے کے تلے بیٹھ کے روتی ہے سکینہ برباد ہوئی میں آباد ہوئی کرب و بلا اجرا مدینہ برباد ہوئی میں آباد ہوئی کرب و بلا اجرا مدینہ برباد ہوئی میں زینب کو نہ رسایا محرم کا مہینہ برباد ہوئی میں آباد ہوئی کرب و بلا اجر مدینہ برباد ہوئی میں آباد ہوئی کرب و بلا اجر مدینہ برباد ہوئی میں یا حسین 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 بار محمد و آل محمد صلوات اللہم صلی اللہ علیہ
Thank you.